Welcome to Dreamy Sleep Tales. I'm your storyteller, and tonight we embark on a journey beyond the edges of any map. A tale of wonder, memory, and starlight. Meet Julian, a cartographer whose life has grown too precise, yet whose heart still yearns for the magic he once believed in. In this adventure, we'll follow him through whispering orchards, across moonlit marshes, and into the hallowed halls of the Last Library of Starlight, where dreams and stories await to be rediscovered. So settle in, make yourself cozy, and let your imagination drift as we begin. Julian's study was a sanctuary of ink and parchment. A single oil lamp cast long shadows across a vast oak desk, strewn with charts of every river's bend, every cliff's face, every island dotting distant seas. Since his grandfather's passing, Julian had devoted himself to the meticulous craft of mapping. Each morning, he rose before dawn to redraw coastlines. Each evening, he polished his compasses until they gleamed like stars. Yet, despite the beauty of his work, a quiet emptiness gnawed at him, an ache for something uncharted. On the morning the adventure began, Julian discovered a dark green envelope on his doorstep, sealed with an emblem of a lone silver star. His name was inscribed in elegant script. Heart quickening, he broke the seal, revealing a folded scrap of vellum and a slender brass key etched with a swirling pattern. The vellum bore a map unlike any he had seen. Its lines seemed to shimmer, as if alive, guiding the eye along a path that shifted when examined too closely. He unfurled it carefully. From the orchard of whispering apples, across the moonlit marsh, through the Wyrmwood's silent gate, to the Last Library of Starlight. A note in the corner, penned in his grandfather's familiar hand, read, "Find what was lost, and you will find yourself." Julian's breath caught. Memories of childhood nights spilled back. The lantern-lit study where his grandfather would read tales of glowing forests and cities carved from crystal, his wide eyes reflecting each wonder. Over the years, Julian had tucked those memories away, convinced maps held all truths worth knowing. Yet now, Holding this mysterious chart, he felt a pull to rediscover the magic he had forsaken. He slipped the brass key into his pocket and, without hesitation, packed provisions, dried fruits, fresh bread, his trusted sextant, and the vellum map. With one last glance at the empty chair across from his desk, he stepped into the dawn light, ready for a journey no ordinary cartographer would dare. By midday, Julian arrived at the orchard of Whispering Apples, a grove said to stand where the boundary between reality and dream grew thin. The trees bore fruit of every hue, golden crimson and deep violet, each apple inscribed with faint, looping letters from languages long forgotten. When breeze stirred the branches, the orchard hummed, delicate voices murmuring secrets, fragments of stories half told. Julian paused beneath a tree with silvery bark and apples that gleamed like lanterns. He plucked one, feeling its gentle warmth against his palm. As he bit into its crisp flesh, words, clear and sonorous, echoed in his mind. Not all paths are drawn in ink. Some lie where the heart dares to wander. He closed his eyes, allowing the truth of the whisper to seep into him. He recalled nights spent tracing known routes instead of yearning for the unknown. The apple's sweetness softened his resolve into quiet determination. When he opened his eyes, the tree's branches arched to form an archway, revealing a narrow trail winding into dawn-lit grasses. At the trail's entrance stood a figure cloaked in deep emerald, face hidden beneath a hood. Without a word, the figure extended a hand, revealing a small silver compass that pointed not north, but toward the heart. Julian accepted the gift. The compass's needle quivered, then settled, guiding him down the path. As he walked, the orchard's whispers faded behind him, replaced by the soft hum of dragonflies skimming over marsh waters. The moonlit marsh stretched before Julian like a mirror of glass and stars. Under an open sky, the shallow waters reflected clouds drifting overhead, and the pale circle of a sun already slanting toward evening. Each step on the wooden planks set into the marsh released ripples that shimmered, and in their shifting, fleeting images, Julian glimpsed memories of his grandfather, the joyous laughter as they discovered a hidden cove, the gentle hush of bedtime stories about worlds beyond. He pressed forward along the narrow causeway, mindful of the marshes' legends, that one who lingered too long would see only reflections of the past, never the path ahead. In the distance, a solitary heron lifted from the reeds, calling out with a mournful cry that echoed across the water. Halfway across, the moon broke through a gathering of clouds, bathing the marsh in silver light. There, on a small island, he saw an abandoned boat, oars broken and driftwood piled against its hull. As Julian approached, the compass in his hand began to glow faintly, its needle spinning until it pointed directly at the boat's keel. He knelt and inspected the wood. Carved into the hull was the shape of a star, the same emblem as the envelope's seal. Underneath, a single word: remember. Julian closed his eyes and let memory wash through him. The feeling of wind in his hair as he sailed with his grandfather, the thrill of charting new horizons, the comfort of stories that hinted at something more. When he opened his eyes, the boat's driftwood had shifted to form a simple rowlock, as though inviting him to continue by boat rather than on foot. He climbed in and dipped the oars into water that rippled with light. The boat moved silently, guided by the compass's glow. His reflection stared back at him, lined with longing and hope. He leaned forward, whispering his promise: "I will not lose my way again." In moments, the marsh receded, replaced by the shadowed tree line of the Wyrmwood. Julian stood in the boat as its prow touched mossy ground. With a deep breath, he stepped onto firm earth, ready to pass through the forest's silent gate. The Wyrmwood's entrance lay between two ancient oaks, their bark gnarled like time itself. No wind stirred the leaves, no bird call echoed here. The map's path led straight into darkness. Julian's heart thumped in his chest as he inserted the brass key into a knot of wood that resembled a keyhole. The tree shuddered, bark peeling back like a curtain to reveal a hidden corridor lined with phosphorescent moss. He stepped inside, candlelight flickering in his mind's eye, but irrelevant here. Bioluminescent blooms cast a pale green glow. Each footfall on the soft earth pressed petals into the ground, releasing a scent of honey and something deeper, indefinable. Halfway through, the corridor opened into a vast glade. There, under the bioluminescent canopy, stood a mirror-like pool. Its surface was so still that the woods above reflected perfectly. A voice like distant thunder spoke. To proceed, you must offer a piece of what you hold most dear. Julian's breath caught. He knew, without understanding how, that the pool mirrored not the forest, but his own soul. On its surface, he saw a flicker, a memory of his grandfather's smile. The warmth of that moment glowed in his chest. A treasure he had kept locked away. His fingers brushed the brass key in his pocket. The key had guided him here, but this trial demanded more. With steady resolve, Julian placed the key on the edge of the pool. As he did, the water shimmered and rippled, drawing the key into its depths. The forest held its breath. Then the water stilled, and a pathway of luminous stones emerged, leading deeper into the Wyrmwood. Julian stepped onto the stones. At each step, he felt the loss of that memory, a soft ache, but also the thrilling promise of discovery. When he reached the glade's far edge, the stones faded, and ahead, a towering stone arch carved with celestial symbols marked the threshold to the cavern beyond. Beyond the stone arch, Julian found himself within a vast cavern whose walls glimmered as if embedded with stars. Each crystal cluster hummed softly, resonating with the pulse of his own heartbeat. Stalactites overhead dripped luminescent droplets that plinked into shallow pools, sending ripples of light dancing across the stone floor. At the cavern's center stood a door carved from ivory-hued oak, its surface inlaid with silver runes in a script older than any Julian had seen. Above the frame, an inscription glowed faintly. Within lies all that was never told, and all that shall yet be dreamt. Julian approached and held out the brass key, now dull from the trials it had already unlocked. Yet as he fitted it into the rune-carved lock, the key resonated anew, glowing to life. He turned it, and the door swung open with a sound like a sigh of relief. Inside, he beheld The Last Library of Starlight. Endless shelves stretched into shadowed heights, each tier carrying volumes whose spines shimmered like opals. The air was perfumed with the scent of vellum and distant dawns. A quiet susurration echoed, pages turning of their own accord, as though eager to share their secrets. Julian stepped into the gallery, where lanterns made of suspended crystal cast pools of gentle light. He saw books inscribed with titles that spoke directly to the heart's unspoken longings. Songs never sung beneath silver moons. Journeys to the unseen horizon. Conversations with lost selves. He felt a soft tug at his sleeve. Turning, he saw Astrid, the keeper of unwritten stories, her midnight blue robes trailing like ink on water. Her eyes held quiet warmth. "You have come to claim what your heart seeks," she whispered. "But first, you must write the story you carry within." She beckoned him to a pedestal upon which lay an empty tome bound in starlight. A quill of moonbeam hovered above it, dripping ink composed of silver dust. Julian approached. He closed his eyes, recalling the ache of loss as he offered his memories and the spark of hope that had guided him here. Taking a breath, he set the quill to paper and began. Once a map maker lived by the certainty of ink and compass. He measured seas and scaled peaks, but the wild frontier of his imagination lay unexplored. One night, under a sky of trembling stars, he found a map that pulsed with longing. Guided by its light, he ventured beyond the orchard of whispering apples, across the moonlit marsh, through the silent gate of Wyrmwood, and into a cavern of crystallized thought. There, he discovered the Last Library of Starlight, where unwritten tales lay waiting. And in its hallowed halls, he learned that the greatest maps are drawn by the heart, and that wonder is the compass that never fails. As the final words settled on the page, the starlight binding glowed and the book closed itself with a soft thud. Astrid smiled and nodded toward a nearby shelf. "There for you lies your story," she said. "Choose one to carry with you, and in it you will find the reminder that wonder never truly fades." Julian walked among the shelves until one particular volume caught his eye. Its cover was pale dawn pink, and the title glowed softly. "The Memory of a wildflower morning. He lifted it, feeling its gentle weight in his hands. The pages felt alive beneath his fingertips, humming with potential. He opened to the first page and read aloud. On a morning bright as hope itself, the dew-kissed wildflowers awoke with laughter of color. They sang to the sun, and in their song, they called to every sleeping heart, reminding all who listened that beauty blooms in the simplest places. As Julian read, warmth blossomed in his chest. He realized that though he had let go of his grandfather's laughter, this new story carried the same spark of wonder. It promised that every day held moments waiting to be noticed. Every horizon held a new tale. He closed the book with reverence. The library around him seemed to exhale, a gentle release of stories that had been waiting for a heart like his. Astrid's voice came softly. "Take this with you, Julian. Share it when you return, so that others may remember." With the memory of a wildflower, morning tucked safely in his satchel, Julian retraced his steps through the cavern, the silent gate, and the moonlit marsh, now shining with promise rather than reflection of loss. At the orchard of whispering apples, he paused once more beneath the silver-barked tree. There, the branches parted, revealing the dawn-lit path home. When Julian reached his study, the oil lamp's flame flickered in greeting. He placed the book on a polished corner shelf beside his maps, its gentle glow illuminating the room. He sat at his desk, opened a fresh sheet of parchment, and for the first time in years, drew not a boundary or coast, but a simple flower, wild and unbound. He paused, then dipped his quill into inky starlight and added words beneath the sketch. Here bloom the beginnings of every new story. Julian set down the quill, his heart light. No longer weighed by the absence of wonder, he felt ready to chart not only lands and seas, but the vast expanse of imagination. And so, dear listeners, our tale of Julian the cartographer comes to rest. For now. He discovered that the truest maps are drawn from experience, memory, and the stories we dare to tell. May his journey remind you too that beyond every measured line lies an unwritten path, waiting for the brave heart to follow. In the days that followed, Julian's study became a crossroads of curiosity. Merchants, scholars, and travelers who once came seeking maps now found themselves drawn to the gentle glow of the memory of a wildflower morning. Whispers spread through the town that Julian held not only charts of distant lands, but a story that could rekindle lost wonder. One crisp morning, a school teacher named Mara arrived at Julian's door, her eyes bright with anticipation. "I've heard of your book," she said, "and I wish to share it with my students. May I read it aloud in class?" Julian hesitated. He had protected the book's magic for himself, but the earnest hope in Mara's voice reminded him of his own yearning for something more than measured lines. He agreed. That afternoon, Julian joined Mara in a sunlit classroom. 40 children sat cross-legged on wooden floors, their faces expectant. Julian opened the book to its first page and read. On a morning bright as hope itself, the dew-kissed wildflowers awoke with laughter of color. As the words filled the room, the children leaned forward, their imaginations blooming. They closed their eyes and pictured fields of petals shimmering in dawn's light. After the reading, the classroom erupted in soft chatter. Not about grades or chores, but about gardens, sunrises, and the stories they might tell themselves tomorrow. Mara turned to Julian, tears in her eyes. "You've given them more than a story. You've given them permission to dream." Julian smiled, feeling the warmth of shared wonder. He realized that the true power of the library's gift was not hoarding it, but letting it flow into the world. Inspired by the children's response, Julian embarked on a new kind of cartography. He collected tales from villagers, an old miller's memory of the sweetest grain he ever ground, a shepherd's story of a lamb that vanished in mist, a widow's recollection of a love letter carried away by a sparrow. In each account, he saw fragments of wonder waiting to be charted. He sketched these stories on fresh parchment, each represented by symbols: a golden spiral for joy, a silver thread for hope, a crimson bloom for love. Soon, his walls were covered not with coastlines, but with a tapestry of human experience, a map of the unseen realms of the heart. Travelers who visited Julian's study no longer asked only for directions to distant ports. They asked, "Where can I find hope?" Or, "How do I reach the shores of my dreams?" Julian would unroll his story map and point to the spirals and petals, guiding them to seek joy in small moments. In a child's laughter, a shared meal, a memory resurrected by a single scent. Through this work, Julian learned that every life held its own library of starlight, hidden beneath layers of routine and doubt. His task was not to chart the physical world alone, but to illuminate the paths within each soul. Word of Julian's story maps spread to the neighboring towns, and soon an inaugural festival of forgotten stories was planned. On the night of the festival, lanterns lined the cobblestone streets, each lantern carrying a tale written by a villager tied to its handle. At the festival's center stood a tall maypole, around which people danced and shared their stories aloud. Julian, as the honored guest, stepped onto a wooden platform and held the memory of a wildflower morning aloft. A hush fell over the crowd as he began. On a morning bright as hope itself, he read the first chapter, his voice carrying on the night air. Behind him, the lanterns flickered like a constellation brought down to earth. When he finished, a round of gentle applause rose, and the festival ignited with renewed vigor. Neighbors embraced, strangers smiled, and the night brimmed with possibility. Afterward, Julian wandered among the lanterns, reading tales pinned to each post. A cobbler's dream of crafting shoes that danced on their own. A baker's wish for bread that could heal sorrow. A blacksmith's hope to forge a key that opens hearts rather than locks. He pressed each note to his chest, his spirit swelling with the knowledge that wonder was contagious, and that every shared story became a beacon. Years passed, and Julian's maps of wonder became treasured heirlooms. Scholars studied his techniques, and travelers made pilgrimages to see his story maps firsthand. Julian himself grew older, his hair silvered like starlight, but his eyes remained bright with curiosity. On the eve of his retirement from formal map-making, Julian penned one final entry in his personal journal. I set out to chart the unknown lands of the world, but found that the richest territories lay within the human heart. May these story maps guide future generations to seek wonder in the ordinary, to believe that every life is a tale worth telling. He placed the journal beside the memory of a wildflower morning on the shelf, a quiet testament to the journey he undertook. That night, Julian returned to the Wyrmwood's edge, where the trees whispered in a language only the heart could understand. He tucked the brass key beneath the roots of the silver-barked tree, an offering of gratitude and a promise that the path to the library would remain open for those who dared to believe. As he walked home under the star-strewn sky, Julian felt, for the first time, that his map was complete. Not a depiction of land, but a living guide to the infinite realm of dreams. And there we have it, dear listeners. A journey from the edge of routine to the very heart of wonder. Thank you for joining Julian on his quest through orchards of whispers, moonlit marshes, and the hallowed halls of the Last Library of Starlight. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Dreamy Sleep Tales, and share it with everyone who could use a little magic in their bedtime. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Head down to the comments and tell me what you liked best, or how the tale stirred your own dreams. Until next time, keep your heart open to the unwritten paths and sweet dreams.